Hello there. This is just supposed to be a audio video, so there's no like visuals of this. It's just a black screen, not missing out on much anything. Um, so with this, I haven't really written like a proper script or anything, but I kind of just wanted to make a video. Excuse me. Kind of make a video around 4th of July. Now today's the 6th, so I wanted to do this over the weekend, but I just ended up doing it. I was basically at home doing stuff with my family and whatnot. Had a great time. We didn't actually do anything really for the holiday specifically. Um, we did some stuff as a family, but it wasn't really for that. It was just a nice time for us. But anyways, um, so I did actually try to record I did actually try to record a video twice for this, but I tried to do it on my phone, but it accidentally, my phone storage was full, so I didn't really get that far. I was like talking for like 10 or 15 minutes or something like that, and then it just went, nope, and we're done. And I tried doing it on my computer here, for a second, but then I was like, oh shit, I don't have my mic on. So it was kind of embarrassing. But if you do enjoy this video, if it interests you, whatever, you resonate with it, I don't know, just feel free to like and, like the video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell if you want to see more stuff like this. Just, whatever you feel like, honestly. Just don't be a jerk about it. I don't know how I'm saying that. I think it's just a general rule of thumb. But in case you somehow didn't know that, just repeating it anyways. Um, so yeah, video about 4th of July. So 250th anniversary of my birth country, the United States of America. Um, and big day, really quite big day. Um, and um, I have some feelings about it, and and just some stuff I'd like to talk about for a little bit. I'll try to keep this video from being like extremely long, but no promises. But if it doesn't get too long, whatever, just feel free to pause the video and just come back to it later on if you want to. No worries. But so, anyways, um, yeah. So I was kind of thinking about this over this weekend, a little bit, as I was hanging out with my family and whatnot, and just kind of recently. Um, you know, I've I'm kind of remembering just I'm sorry. I'm remembering back to some of my previous 4th of Julys that I've celebrated. Um, a couple of different ones. I remember um, I remember many years ago, when I was a kid, and the way we do it, we went with our extended family, went on over to my Nan and Pop-Up's house, or area or whatever. Um, Actually, no, it wasn't them. It was one of my aunts and uncles' place. It was one of their houses in their barn and all that. Um, they they have some horses, and yeah, actually, horses are pretty much kind of like their main thing. Um, Now that I remember, haven't actually been there for actually a good few years now. Now that I think about it. Anyways, side point. But yeah, so is that I remember one or two times when we went there, and we just cook up, just have some hot dogs and cheeseburgers on the grill, and just have some chips and it basically just like just like classic like American food stuff. That was pretty good, but and yeah, I did end up having a good couple of them each time. Again, I mean, I still kind of am, but like pretty hungry growing up and all that. Um, but I think that's pretty normal for young guys. So, Um. Anyways, yeah, I do remember, going out there a couple times, and we eat all that good food, and we just kind of like stand by and just talk about stuff, and be late evening or be early nighttime or whatever, and we just like have a nice time, and we just like set off some fireworks and have like a whole Mabel fire going or something, and I don't know. I can't really remember like specifically like what we talked about because again, this was like forever ago, and it's not really a thing I've like thought about like too much and such. But yeah, nothing real too much to it, but just kind of some nice, just like general memory or whatever, you know. Um, but on the other hand, and this is quite a big jump one, but just bear with me. Um, I had this one kind of really sad instance, and I'll try to like bring up some more of the context leading to it. Um, I had this really sad one, in fact, just this like 2 years ago. Why was basically doing the summer program right before my freshman year of college, the college that I'm going to right now, and and yeah, so I think that year it was a Thursday. Again, it was 2 years ago. Such so yeah, it's Thursday, and um, and actually, look, let me just get up to the context. Just some different things before I kind of try to talk about it a little bit. Um, so you know, I'm trying to think of a good way of like bridging up to that memory. I guess. Forgive me if I'm not really doing this the best way, but I'll just try. Um, so um, when I was in public school, we had history class and such. Pretty normal. Um, but I ended up actually having this one. Well, actually, I kind of these one or two like history classes that kind of just like really stuck with me. I think. When that kind of started to kind of just like expand my sort of really expand my understanding of of um, of this country, and I'm really grateful to both of the teachers that I had for both of those years. Um, so yeah, when I was in high school, in my 10th and 11th grade years, I didn't actually have any history class in my 12th grade year. Um, um, but yeah, my 10th and 11th grade years, especially the 11th grade one, but the 10th grade one did also quite help a lot too. you know. And we really went through, and both of them were a lot about like, I think the 10th grade one was more, I want to say was more internationally focused. Um, like it was just part of some international history. Obviously, there's a lot of things now I think about that we didn't really go over. But it was still fairly comprehensive. And the other one, the 11th grade year one, so that was a AP class. Um, there's funny story stuff with that, but that's for not the time. But yes, AP class, which if you don't know what that means, basically just means like it's a special extra difficulty version of a class where you can technically get like additional like credits and stuff for that like help you in like college or whatever. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't end up actually passing the class for AP. I did end up passing it for the class itself and for the high school, but for the AP credit part of itself, I didn't end up getting it, which I did feel bad about. But at the same time, it was a pretty difficult class, and I did definitely try my best. So I'm not too upset about it. Which again, this was like basically around like 4 years ago or something at this point. So you know, what has been on my mind since then. Um, but yeah, so with that class, um, right, the 11th grade one, it was a AP US history class, and we really went through basically, you know, the country's birth all the way to, I want to say it was close to the beginning of the 21st century. I don't think we really got much further than around like 2000 or 2001 or something like that. But so yeah, um, and of course, obviously there's a lot of stuff with any history class you need to kind of talk about or whatever, the country and stuff. But one thing that I really appreciated with the class in particular, in hindsight, was just like that the teacher will try to get us to like think critically about and just try to like understand both like the positive and the negative, um, of the parts of our history, and really trying to like go into depth with them. And I think honestly, like, I mean, with anything, but especially it's a great thing with history classes. That's a really good one, even if the. I mean, obviously now in hindsight, I'm sure there's a lot more stuff they could have added to it, but to be fair, even for a high school and even a more conservative area, I mean, Kentucky's not my home state. It's not like the most conservative state, but it's like pretty conservative. I'm not conservative myself, but whatever. Um, you know, um, but it's still a really good thing to try to really be like honest about like not just. I mean, obviously you're going to be honest about like the good stuff of your own history. Like that's just just like makes sense or whatever. You know, whether that's history. And I don't mean just like on a national sense. I just mean like on a personal level sense too. Like it's easy to just be like, oh, right, like I can just be honest about like these are the good things I've done, or just as like that's just I don't know. It's just like I don't whatever. I don't think it's really necessary to say, but I think you get the point. But like, I think really to be like like give a more accurate representation and to also like do yourself or to do the place where you come from like more justice. I think it's great to really be honest about like the negative stuff too, um, and really try to like delve into that because like I think right as whatever the saying is, and I don't remember, and I'm probably messing this up, but like the whole thing of right if you don't learn history, you're like doomed to repeat it or whatever. And I think it's probably a little more nuanced than that. But I think, yeah, but the core idea, though, right, is pretty important. But regardless of that, just for my own personal sense, because again, I'm not really like someone who's, well, at least not yet, anyways. I'm not really making like a very. I mean, I am. I know I am important, and I'm not saying this is like a grandiose thing. I think this is like pretty okay to say, but whatever. Okay, just don't do it. I know that on a personal level, right? I'm important to my friends, my family, some of the people around me and stuff, right? Not everyone, of course, but some people, right? But on a national level, right? I'm not really like I'm not really much of anyone, or whatever. Like, yeah, I voted like one time in the I voted one time in the presidential election. Again, I've only been an adult for like 2 years basically, so like the it was I voted in the um 2024 presidential election. I did not vote for Trump, but if you somehow didn't know that, well, now you do. um I voted for someone else. um But anyways, um, yeah, right. Um, anyway, I'm kind of again. I'm sorry. I'm really getting off track here. But the class for myself, right? I think that my point is, and I kept on going off it. My point was that right with the class, we were being honest, and we were going into detail or things, and we were learning about stuff like the internment of Japanese American citizens, right, during World War II, or um, like different term right off, like the sort of like treatment of and what were depth of of various Native American um, groups across the country, right, and just how horrible that was. Of course, I heard the idea think of Trail of Tears before, but that's a really good one to point out too, right? Or um, there's stuff, right? Tons of other things too, but again, I don't want to make this be an extremely long video. Right, but just like two examples to name, or like another great one to point out would be like, um, the just the level of like lynching of black people, right? That happened throughout the country's history. Especially in especially in the 20th century. Um, right, or just I don't know, all kinds of other things. Just really terrible stuff. Um, and and even I think like if I could even say more recently, like um, like I actually had a class in this, or this the semester at the beginning of this year. It's about Appalachian history and such. Now it's just kind of like the intro class or whatever, something like that. Um, but one thing I really did learn from that class, right, was just how much, like how important really, a lot of Appalachian peoples really were, and still are, quite relevant for the broader nation and just like so many different ways, and just like to learn about some of their struggles and learn about things of all just the these big fights and just these big dedicated and really courageous acts to try to like push back against these oppressive working conditions that they had and extremely poor living conditions that they went through and just the abuse and exploitation that they faced, not just from their own, not just from the people who own the mines, of course, although that's the primary culprit, but also from the way that people outside of Appalachia kind of viewed them because of just the propaganda that was spread about them, right, and all of these terrible stereotypes. And honestly, in the class, like I just felt like I felt like pretty fucking pissed. Like, like I kid you not. Like, I mean, I felt pretty pissed at the other history class I had before, right? But like, yeah, definitely one reaction that I had, and I was like, yeah, like it, like, wow, I think it's just it. I don't even really know where I'm putting it, but like, I could just say this, like, just hats off to you, all of the various people of Appalachia, who have worked like unbelievably hard, insanely hard on a way that I can't even really like personally like probably even fully understand. Like I can abstractly understand it, and like I was able to understand it a lot more um, because I learned about it in the class. But it's one thing just to like learn about stuff, right, from someone else. Um, You know, it's one thing to do that. It's one thing to read about things or watch videos or have discussions, and it's another entire thing. This kind of goes with anything in life, but it's an entirely different thing to be able to go and be like to actually see the stuff firsthand, right? To be able to actually go through, um, the working conditions, just the extremely poor pay, the wage theft, the lack of, protections and worker rights, just so many truly terrible things, like really, really bad, and that's understating it, honestly. Um, you know, and just like hats off to all of these people who have worked so hard throughout this country's history, who have, come together, who have unionized, who have fought for things that we just take for granted today, right? I mean, I know that it's easy to, and it is there is definitely valid criticism to the the problems that we face today in the modern United States, right, of the 2020s. But I think it's also important to be able to understand how we got here and to be able to appreciate what had to take place in order for me to be able to sit here and to be able to talk about these kinds of things and to be able to look back at this very complicated, this very complex national history that we have, right? And to be able to make my own sense of it, and for better or worse, right? And I think that with those, I think with these classes, but I also just think with my own like personal reflections, whether it's historical, but also especially with the modern day stuff, as I think about where do I want to live after college, what kind of life do I want to have, just normal young adult questions, right? Things that um, are really important to me, things that I will be figuring out and doing and testing and experiencing for the first time, really, once I graduate in 2 years or so. Um, and I'm kind of deciding, having to think about really like what world do I want to live in? What world do I want to be a part of? Um, of course, there's more to it than that because again, we also create the world, right? We're not just passive. Um, I mean, we can be, but we're not just simply passive. We don't just take in from the environment, the people around us. We also contribute back to that too. Um, but again, discussion for a different time, right? I don't think it's realistic to go to every single side point here, but I think you get the idea. Um, but what was I gonna say? Um, I lost my train of thought for a second. Um, you know, I think when I remember back to, you know, um, when I remember back in these classes that I've had, the various reflections that I've had about a lot of different things with this country, and what does it mean about me? What do I think and feel about all this stuff? Whether it's just media, or money, or um, politics, or history, or whatever, just all kinds of things. And it's like, um, I've had like a I've had these moments of kind of feeling like, I feel like I can both really see the sort of like potential and the good things that people have done. Again, like I've said, like the things that we have now, we just take for granted, right? Like the 8-hour workday or the 40-hour work week or um, just lots of other things. Obviously, it's not much more than just the two things, but you know, again, I'm not trying to go into every single example of everything. I don't think it's entirely necessary to do that because I'm not trying to make like a proper like argument stuff. I'm just talking about things here. Um, right. I think like I said, I've had this both really back and forth of feeling like of just of kind of like a really just this big mixture of like both pride and shame, honestly. And I think part of the reason why it feels kind of weird for me to talk about this a little bit with some other people is that this kind of gets into a lot of different things, but I feel weird. This is maybe just a personal thing. I just feel kind of weird being like, yeah, I'm proud to be part of this group of people. Um, you know, whether it's in a national sense, although that's obviously, relevant for this conversation or monologue, whatever. Um, or whether it's just something smaller scale like my state or my school, whether that was my high school or my college or whatever, or even like a personal small group of people that I'm in or something, right? Like I don't know, whatever, just like a class that I'm in or something. I don't know, or just like the job place that I'm at or stuff. I don't know. Um, excuse me. Um, but frick, I lost my train of thought. I lost my thought process again. No. Um, frick. Um, yeah. So what was I gonna say? Yeah. So with the whole kind of like group thing, whatever. I especially feel like it's kind of. I mean, I know on a big level, like it'd be perfectly fine for me too, but like I do feel kind of, I don't know, just a little weird, a little awkward, being like, yeah, I'm gonna like also be part of like this sort of like collective show of like national pride or whatever. Even though it's just for the holiday or something, because like I don't know, I think it's just I don't. I feel it's not that I don't feel proud about things. Um, but I think I care a lot about not wanting to like go over the board with it, not wanting to be arrogant about it, and I feel like I honestly care a lot more about like I don't know, like whenever I think of the pride stuff, I'm gonna be like, can we just be like down to earth and honest and humble and just like can we just focus on being like good, decent people and stuff? And like, I don't know. I know that like the national pride stuff, like all the times it's not necessarily going to be like a aggressive thing. It's not like a hyper. I mean, for some people, or sometimes it can be. That's for sure. Um, not always. I know, right? But like, I don't know. I just don't want to. I just don't want to be perceived as arrogant. I just don't want to think of myself. I don't want to feel like that I am, even if I'm not really being that way. And again, this is kind of more of a personal thing. I think I'd probably feel this anywhere, I suppose. Um, but like, so that's part of it. I think of myself. Um, but I think it's also that it feels kind of difficult to just blindly just be like, or just confidently just be like, yes, I like or dislike this thing or this person or this place or whatever, when it's just so complicated and it's so nuanced and there's so much to say. It's not really a black and white thing. And so it just feels kind of weird for me just to say one thing definitively because I feel like that kind of misses at some of the truth or misses at some of the point and stuff. And I don't really want to like simplify it down to that or something. Um, I just because I just care about being honest. And I'd rather be honest and even if it hurts, um, I'd rather know the truth even if it hurts rather than living a lie or something like that. Um, but I think at the same time, like I know it's felt weird for me to be like around other people of this country, other Americans, to be like, yeah, I'm proud to be American River, in whatever sense that means for me, right? Whether that's just like things that I personally like from here, like the media or food or whatever, or whether that's bigger things like some of our ideals or beliefs, or just like a sort of vision that I feel like I have in my mind of what this country can be like, you know. Um, and to be like to sharing that with other people because it just feels like such a me thing, and I just feel really weird kind of just sharing that, and it feels kind of vulnerable too. It doesn't mean I won't try, but it just feels like very personal. It's kind of like when you're sharing a piece of art. Honestly, it's kind of like when you're sharing when you're being vulnerable about something, right? Like even if it's not like the deepest thing, like it takes effort to do that, and it takes a lot of trust in the other person. I feel like in my mind, I don't know for sure, but I feel like in my mind, a lot of things that a lot of people would feel proud about with this country are not things that I would personally choose to be proud of, or at least that are not really high priority for me. Right? For example, like I could talk about sports, I could talk about Second Amendment rights stuff. I could talk about um, I don't know, just like lots of other things, you know. Um, but right, one of the weird things for me too is like when I was in Australia, and I've talked about being there before. I studied abroad in Sydney, Australia this last year for around almost 4 months or so. It's the only ever time I've actually lived in a different place. Um, for, well, any time at all, basically, actually. My first time being out the country. Um, right. And of course, I don't really know where I'm going to live one day. I haven't really decided. Of course, it's not really an easy thing for me to decide. I've just gone back and forth on so much, and that's just a whole it's just a whole discussion of itself. To just it's so hard for me to feel like I can just definitively decide like yes, this is where I want to go live and stuff. Like this is where I think I'm gonna be, or at least try to be, right? But I just can't know and I can't decide, and I'm just feeling like I'm going between these big, very different ideas and visions of what my future can be like, and it's just hard to decide. And there's so many factors to it, right? But let's try not to get too much into it, right? But I think one interesting thing from when I was in Australia was that it did feel easier for me. Not immediately. It took me a little while, but like after like a while, probably at least like maybe closer to halfway through, or a little later than that. Like it became easier for me to. I don't know exactly what triggered it, to be quite honest. I think a large part it could have simply just been that I just missed family, and I just kind of needed to have some things to bring me some comfort because there's just a lot of stuff to go through, and it was honestly kind of a lonely time for me. I didn't really have very many people I was actually like able to be with, do tons of stuff with. Like I only have any like really good friends there. I mean everyone was nice and stuff. Like it wasn't really like a friendliness issue. Um, right? It could I think honestly just could have been some of that stuff. But I think right, the point is it felt easier for me over time to be like feel proud about like oh I'm American and I think part of that again could have just been looking for stuff but also part of it could have just been also like like oh because I don't know it's just like a personal thing but like I kind of feel more proud on some level if I'm like ooh I'm like the different person or like I kind of stand out in some way not like in a achievement sense necessarily or not like in a I'm better than you. So, like I don't want to come and feel like that's not really what it's about. It's not about like superiority or anything like that. I think that's honestly really stupid. But like I don't know. I just sort of think of myself in so many respects as like, oh I'm like the sort of different person or whatever. I don't know. I just think of myself as kind of standing apart from the group of people that I'm with, in whatever respect. And I think, right, when I've been here in the U.S., right, I'm surrounded by other people of the same national birth as me, so I don't really feel that same because I'm like, well, I don't really feel like, oh, I'm the American, because it's just like, oh, I'm surrounded by other people from here too, because I am here. Like, um, but like but when I was in Sydney, I mean, yeah, there was other people from the U.S. there for sure. I mean, there's tons of, it's a very international city. It's a very big place. Lots of people there. Um, right, but like, like most people around me were Australian or just from wherever in the world, essentially, right? And it kind of felt easier for me to be like, wow, I feel a little more like distinct and stuff, and I can kind of like I have like a sort of like a more particular kind of place or just kind of like stand out in certain ways. Um, and I can kind of like I'm like one of those like interesting foreigners for some people, not for everyone, but for some people that I met. To be like, oh yeah, I'm from the U.S. and here's all the things I can talk about. You can ask me those questions or whatever stuff, and I'd be like glad to talk about things, right? And that was like really interesting for me to be able to do. Um, and stuff, right? And it felt easier for me to go around and be like, yeah, I'm proud of certain things. Not everything, of course, but like, it was pretty. I think I was pretty humble about a lot of it, to be quite honest. And I actually had a class there. In fact, I can't remember the exact name, but it was about the U.S. It was basically, but it was just like through the lens of like an Australian perspective, at least somewhat, anyways. And I thought it was really interesting, and one kind of thing that I learned, I suppose, when I was in Australia was like, especially earlier on, like I knew that and this is kind of just a me thing, like I especially feel like I really care about like trying to pay attention to, like if I'm in a new place, right? Especially if I'm in like a whole new country for sure, right? To really be like mindful of the kind of way I'm representing myself. Because when you go somewhere new, whether you're intending to or not, you're representing where you're from. And it's really a huge thing when you go abroad because it's such a big scale thing. And and you're showing whether you want to or not, you're showing people in that place, like what kind of an example of like what kind of people come from your country. Obviously, countries are massive. There's tons of people, so many kinds of things from everywhere. And so, like, obviously, there's no like perfect uniform example, right? You're being a example. That's the important thing. Um, right. But you're being a example. And I, and I did feel like I didn't, I don't know, I just felt kind of weird for some of the time being there and stuff, and I didn't want to like, you know, um, I didn't really want to be like all too like, like there's a lot of stereotypes and stuff, and there's probably a lot of truth to it too of like the annoying American or like the loud American or whatever, all this kind of stuff, or just like these really big sort of things of pride that just kind of seem really annoying to people from other places. Um, but regardless of that, a lot of Australians actually, and of course, I can't speak for the entire country. Again, I've met a very, very small part of their population. Again, there's only like Sydney and some surrounding areas, and I mean a little bit in Canberra, but I didn't really interact with that many people in Canberra to really actually have a discussion with them or anything. To be quite honest, right? But from what I could tell, and from what little I did get to hear and talk about, that generally speaking, Australians also they seem to have like a fairly positive perspective, or else like as a neutral to positive um, kind of perspective on Americans or just like parts of our culture and things. Um, a little bit of a different opinion towards a little more mixed towards like our government stuff, but in terms of like for the people, it was more like friendly and what, or just kind of like neutral, whatever. More just a sort of attitude of like, well, like with anyone, if you're a respectful person, then I'll, in my opinion, you'll be higher or whatever, or something like that. No, it's not exactly those words, but kind of that idea. Um, but and I think that kind of made it a little bit easier, I suppose, for myself. But I know if I'd gone somewhere like somewhere in the Middle East or somewhere in China or something like that, probably would have been a very different experience, right? In terms of how I might have been viewed or treated, perhaps, right? Because again, a lot more hostility towards the U.S. for understandable reasons, to say the least. But, anyways, um, so yeah, I actually ended up carrying and you can't see it right now, obviously, but it wouldn't really matter even if you could, because we probably already know what it looks like. But I did actually end up at one point. I went to a flag shop and actually bought a small Canadian flag, which I got to kind of be like, oh, well, for a couple of reasons, but one of the main ones was to, you know, kind of just sort of be like a representative thing of some of my Canadian friends and whatnot, and my respect for Canada, my interest in it, um, you know. But I also got an American flag to remind me of home and whatnot, and I carried around both of those flags for a good deal of the time. Unfortunately, I lost my Canadian flag at some point on a train. It slipped on my bag somehow. I was not able to find it. It's kind of a shame. Um, but I did still end up having the U.S. flag. That one did not fall out of my bag. Um, you know, but like, um, but yeah, I carried around that for a good while and stuff, and it was cool for me to be able to like share things with some people and just be able to talk about stuff from home or whatever, or to be able to like share some of the music or like whatever, just like different stuff. And and honestly, like I was very grateful to come home when it got closer to the study abroad program because again I was just so I really liked my time in Sydney and whatnot, but I think it was simply just because like again I hadn't seen my family for like literally like 4 months or so. This is my first time being out of the country, my first time having flown to a different place, my first time having flying. um, right, and I was just ready to be home. I hadn't done anything like this before at all, and I really wanted just to be home, and I wanted to see my family and my pets again, and all that stuff. I still do want to go back, for sure. Don't get me wrong, and that's certainly a big thing up in my mind. I was just talking about it at the concert at the time. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if it's really the most helpful to say all this stuff. There's probably other details I'm forgetting. Just a little things for myself. So, anyways, though, I should probably try to get closer to wrapping this up. Hopefully, this video has kind of made a lot of sense or whatever, at least somewhat, right? But there's a lot of when I think about this country, um, you know, it's it's not simple to put it in uh, this put it in a particular way, I guess. Um, and I don't know. I just again whether I decide to live here post college for like basically the rest of my life or most of it, or whatever, or whether I move to Australia or Canada or wherever, um, and call some other country my home one day. Um, I definitely do. I think it's as much as I might have had criticism and so many things I dislike, or just that I whatever, just like stuff like that. I just feel so frustrated with this country. I don't think it's because I don't care. I think it's precisely the opposite. Um, and whether I want to or not, you know, this is my birth country, right? And this has a lot of this place means a lot to me, for better or worse. And I want when I think about it, whether it's to myself or it's other people, I want to be honest here, like I said before, right? Honesty is a value of mine, and I want to respect that, right? I want to do it justice, and um, so it's a really long video, I know, and there's probably a lot of other stuff I could have said, but this is getting quite long. It's like 46 minutes right now. Um, very much appreciate if you got to this part. Um, right, but you know, I I think that I just like with anything, with lots of things, I hope and pray for the best. Um, for myself, for my family, for my friends, but also just for the nation as a whole. And I don't know what's gonna happen. I really honestly don't. I don't know what's gonna happen for my own personal future with the country I'm gonna live in. I don't know, what that's gonna look like. Um, I don't know what's gonna happen politically. I don't know what kinds of things will change, what things will stay the same about this place, about this country. Um, but you know, it having been the 250th anniversary, just 2 days ago, this weekend, you know, this last Saturday. Today's a Monday. Um, right of the U.S. I think it's important to just be able to reflect back on it and just to think about how did we get here, where are we now, and where are we going? And it's a big question. It really is. And you know, but regardless, um, I think that you know, well, I'll just say this. I'm grateful for um, the people who, you know, my parents, my brother, my pets, um, my various friends that I've had, the church that I've gone to for the most part for the last couple of years, even if we're not being there for most weekends, you know, um, the just the other places I've been through and stuff, and that's shaped me. That's been a part of my own history and my own making in my own life, and you know, and I just want to be grateful for that. And I don't know what I'm going to do with that exactly going forward. Again, I don't know the future. I can't know it. Um, but I just, I want to be able to at least appreciate, again, the people and the things that I've had. And I know that even if I have these feelings, all these criticisms, all these hopes, all these dreams, whatever, and that regardless of which place I end up deciding to live in, um, that, you know, all this stuff that has shaped me, that has really helped me become the person I am today. You know, I wouldn't exist without it. And I just think that's important to say. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but, you know, still gotta say it. But, anyways, thanks for watching, or listening, rather. And if you have any thoughts, feel free to, feel free to message me on here, leave a comment or something, whatever. Um, and just have a wonderful day or night or whatever it is for you when you're listening to this. And again, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. And yeah, happy late 4th of July, I suppose. Bye bye.